Hello, my guest today is Tom Borelli, a contributor at America's Voice. He's also worn many hats. He formerly worked in finance and was also a scientist. But he's here today to talk to us about values, his values, and where he thinks the country maybe could go if we work at it. Thank you so much for being here, Tom.
Great. Thanks for having me.
So how would you describe yourself now politically?
Politically, I'm a conservative. And the reason for that, because I really believe in individual liberty. And that's really really has been my focus. I really don't like anyone telling me what to do, especially the government.
But you were not always a conservative. Can you explain where you started and how you came to where you are today?
Yeah. More recently, I've been really a conservative activist, commentator on TV, radio. But I wasn't raised in a political household at all. My father was a World War II veteran. Worked in a post office. My mother was a middle school cafeteria worker. My mother's a Republican. My father was a Union Democrat. So politics really wasn't a big theme in our house. My original focus was I wanted to be actually a veterinarian. So I loved animals, liked working with animals. So I wanted to be a veterinarian. So my original degree is actually from Michigan State University in microbiology.
At that point, were you a Democrat, or what was the...
I voted Republican, but I wasn't a passionate Republican because politics really wasn't a big focus of my life. I eventually worked for General Foods Corporation when I graduated from college, and I wanted to be a research scientist. So my focus was on playing with test tubes and actually microbiology, which is big these days with the coronavirus. But I really wanted to be a research scientist. But I ended up having an opportunity to be part of a fellowship program that placed me in Congress as a fellow. So I worked in 1987 for Congress, for the House Science Committee. And that's where I got exposed to really the importance of politics. And it's a really big lab. And the decisions there make a big impact for everybody. So that's how I started getting involved in more politics. And that's where I became much more of a Republican when I saw the way even the Democrats at the time were operating. It bothered me philosophically.
What were some of those philosophical points?
Well, it was that, government is the answer to almost everything. Kind of quoting President Reagan, if it moves, regulate it. And that's what they were wanting to regulate. My interest, again, was science. So they were worried about or wanting to regulate, biotechnology. We don't know enough really what do you want to regulate yet, so let's go slow. But they regulate first, ask questions later. So that was kind of the first really clue to me that I was really a conservative.
And what are some of the issues that today you feel need to be looked at?
Well, I think generally, again, going back to my core philosophy, is right now, in fact, in this current election, we have really a group of Democrats that really want to tell us how to live our lives. So if you're a person who supports Bernie Sanders, you're really supporting something like Medicare for all, which means the government gives you all your health care. But a lot of people don't realize the government can say no to your health care when they control it. Your decisions, your choices are going to be removed. You're then at the hands of a bureaucrat. So if you like going to the state motor vehicles department, you're going to love government-run health care because you're going to be told what to do and when you can get it and if you can get it. And the government, no doubt, because of the cost, will then go into rationing of health care, which is a scary thought.
And which is what we're seeing in some, I know it's happened in England where children are denied care if they're considered too...
And even the former mayor, Michael Bloomberg, New York City mayor, recently aired a videotape where he basically said if you're 95 and you have prostate cancer, bye-bye, you're not going to get any treatment. So to me, that should be up to the individual choice and the family, not the government. And I think that's one of the real key differences of the way politics today kind of reflects my views, and in terms of why I try to communicate my views to people so they understand the differences. And the other thing, again, from being a research scientist originally, is Medicare for all. Where's the drug innovation going to come from? Without a profit opportunity, incentive, first of all, why are you going to become a medical doctor? Because let me tell you, to become a medical doctor, you have to give up a lot of studying, 4 years in college. You got to get into medical school, there's another 4 years, 1 or 2 years of internship, and then a couple of years of residency, depending where you want to go. So by the time you're actually in practice, you could be 32, 35. You've given up the prime quotes of your age. And then for what on the return side? For the government to tell you how to treat patients? No, it's not going to work. And then on the research side, what about the incentive for new drugs, new vaccines, like we're faced today with the coronavirus? I mean, miraculously, they've already determined the whole sequence of this coronavirus, which then allow for a vaccine to be made. Well, that all comes from research. If the government's running everything, good luck with that.
You think it would be a very different landscape?
And a very different landscape, yeah, right.
Well, can you describe it in the research realm, what the shortcomings would be? Well,
because you're taking the profit motive and the risk taking from corporations. Look, there are corporations that take advantage of drug prices for sure. There's a way to deal with that, but nationalizing it is not the way to deal with it, because again, the person who's going to be doing the research or the approval of the research is going to have the government bureaucrat mindset. Think again of the person at motor vehicles. When you waited on a long line and you find out you're in the wrong line, you got to wait on another long line. There's not a lot of sympathy, and there's no way to really hold them accountable. And that's the key point, really, of smaller, more limited government. If you don't like what a company is selling you, you could sue them. Suing the government is really hard. They have much deeper pockets than we do.
Mm-hmm. So 2 questions. One, right now I know the BMJ has launched a campaign to look at corporate interests in healthcare, because they've also determined that that's also a bit of a problem, and there are too many profit motive fingers in the pie. And so can you talk about that, and what might be another a happy balance, or what might a really healthy research landscape look like?
Yeah, I think in general, the government really needs to relook at the way they regulate, pharmaceutical industries. Because remember, for a company to get a drug approved, I forget the number, but it's a big number in terms of the requirements. It could be up to billions of dollars to get a drug approved, or hundreds of millions of dollars for the early discovery, then the first round of trials, the second rounds of trials. And after all that, the company wants a return for all that effort. So under a Bernie Sanders view of the world, there's not going to be that sort of incentive to take that risk. And that's risk-taking is really the key to really all discovery, or Apple iPhones. Again, it was Steve Jobs with the Apple computer in his garage. The government's going to be running all of that. Where's the innovation going to come from?
What about the other side, where it's the corporations who are channeling the funds and have too much influence? People.
Well, again, all that can be monitored and reported on and exposed. Right.
So
I much rather the public media pressure than the heavy-handed government, because the heavy-handed government is usually one size fits all. Right. It doesn't speak to the smaller companies or the more developing companies. They like to focus on the really big targets, kind of like the trial lawyers. They go where the money is.
Yeah. So another question about that one size fits all, and this is a very, quite a hot topic these days, but vaccines. We have a program now where it's pretty much one size fits all for a medical procedure.
Right.
And we also have the case where you cannot, for most of the childhood vaccines, you cannot sue the manufacturer. And many people are concerned about this. I'll just say that in the U.S. And I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts?
There's a fine balance, because I think the vaccine companies wanted that protection, because if one thing goes wrong, because you're dealing in a population, so if you have a vaccine, maybe it's 0.01% of a child or person's going to have a problem, but that one person out of 100 million people can bankrupt the company. So you need that balance of some sort of protection, because let's face it, if you're selling a vaccine, the whole purpose is to save people, not to make people sick. So there's got to be that fine balance of protection, but also where the companies are not going to be, abusive. But one of the downsides of over-regulation is now we're finding out that a lot of our drugs are being made, guess where? China, right? Because of the lower cost. So, all of these things really need to be looked at with a sense of balance rather than emotion. And you don't get that in politics.
Yeah.
Because you even heard today, or yesterday, Nancy Pelosi, coronavirus, President Trump doesn't know anything. And that's basically a fear mongering. Well, let's get the facts first. Let's worry about people's health. And then you could play politics somewhere down the line.
Where do you see the hope for our country? And these times are not easy for anyone on either side of the debate. But I feel that there is a way forward. We're all human, and
Right.
we can agree on
Right.
certain basic, I hope, values and rights.
Right.
What would you say to that?
To the point of your real expertise and your focus, it really is values. What do you value? Do you value individual liberty, or do you value other people making decisions for you? I certainly fall on, let me make my own mistakes and I'll live with them. I don't want to be at the hands of government. And I think that's the first question people should ask, even before whether you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, Libertarian. What do you really believe in? Do you believe in liberty and the right for you to make your own decisions, or do you want someone else to make those decisions for you? And I think from there, you can start to make your choices. Former Mayor, New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, when he was mayor of New York City, he wanted to ban the sale of 16-ounce sugar-sweetened soda. Why? According to him, people are too stupid to make their own lifestyle choices. Personally, I prefer a Diet Coke. I'd rather my calories come from somewhere else, a piece of cheesecake, than soda. But I know that. That's my choice. I don't want the government telling me where my choices come from. It's as simple as that. So I think if you start that, where do you value? What are your values? Where do you want your decisions being made? Where do you want your doctor's decision being made? Do you want your doctor's decision being made based on his or her knowledge and experience, or do you want that doctor's decision being made by a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C.? Because those are life-affecting choices. So just boil it down.
Now, what about, because I know a big attraction for the big programs, the universal health care, is that the idea that they will help more people and help people who are at the bottom of society, who don't have the means, they're not concerned about choice. They're just concerned mostly about getting by in life. Do you have any ideas about what can be done to help them without taking the freedoms
No, certainly,
away?
medical insurance, health insurance is a complicated issue. But again, if you do for something like Medicare for all, you have insurance, God bless. Now go find a doctor. The point isn't having insurance. The point is being able to see a doctor and getting treated at affordable prices. And I think that's the core difference. We have Medicaid to help people who are on the lower income scale. We have Medicare, which is obviously government run for people 65 and older. But in between, a lot of people, hundreds of million people, have their health care through corporations, and it allows an insurance company to help buffer the costs and the benefits. So there's no really ideal solution, but I could tell you the ideal not solution is government running everything. Right. Because you may be covered, but good luck in finding a doctor.
It's hard when you're talking about a country of this size,
right,
and talking about getting everyone insured, because there's no program that won't let certain people fall through the cracks. Does that agree with that?
Right.
And so at a certain level there has to be individual responsibility, it seems.
Right. It always boils down to that. People, when I was going for my first job, one of the first drivers for me to get a job, motivations, was to get a job so I could get health insurance. That was one, in fact, I think historically, that's when companies started to provide health insurance because they gave them a competitive advantage versus another company. It was a benefit. So I think it's up to you to figure it out is much better than up to the government to figure it out.
What would you say about the hope for this country, about where you see that we can,
well, certainly,
what steps we can take?
Last few presidential elections, I've said it's a pivot point, but this is each election, the stakes get higher and higher. I thought the last one, the stakes were higher. I thought the one before that was, but it keeps going higher and higher. If it's, for example, between President Trump and, let's say, Senator Bernie Sanders, it is a huge pivot point. Because the decision, again, is, do you want government doing everything for you, or do you want to do things for yourself? And personally, I have confidence that the American people really do value liberty, really do value that individual experience. I know, the first time I was 16 when I drove a car, it was such a liberating experience. On the Green New Deal that Bernie Sanders likes, you may not have that kind of opportunity to have a car. There'll be more opportunity to mass transit. Everybody get packed in cattle cars and travel the way the government tells you to, rather than getting in that car and say, gee, I want to drive to Michigan today. I think I will. These are the sorts of consequences, small, but of this election.
And I would hope that we have, as a culture, we also have adequate compassion to take care of those.
But I think, generally, I think there have been studies done, conservatives are far more compassionate than liberals in terms of donating money to causes. And that's another problem. It used to be the local community used to take care of people when they had medical issues or health issues in the family. The church, the synagogue, whatever would come together to help people. That's now been replaced by government. I think we're much better off relying on the smaller local community for services like that, because then our tax dollars get funneled into government, and then government, as we know, is terribly inefficient. Smaller is better.
You did some research in leukemia, and that's also just such a heartbreaking disease that's becoming more prevalent.
Yeah.
It seems, and I'm wondering, can you give any hope?
Oh no, I mean, there have been tremendous progresses with all cancer treatments, and then that goes back to innovation. Tremendous progresses. Now there are newer technologies. They're able to customize your cancer treatment, where they'll be able to isolate an immune cell from your body and then put it back in so it knows where to specifically attack the cancer, as opposed to the days of chemotherapy. It's basically poison. We're going to kill the cancer cell a little bit more than the other cells. Or radiation. We're going to kill all the cells in a certain area. So we're now getting to the point where you'll be able to customize cancer treatment. And that's all from innovation. So there's great hope and opportunities for that. But people need the incentives to do that. I think the bottom line is, in this confused world, sit down by yourself and to think about who do you want to make decisions for your life, and then take it from there. And learn from life experience, like the DMV.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today. If people want to know more, can they?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter @Tom Borelli, Facebook Tom Borelli, and I'm a contributor with America's Voice News.
Well, thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you.